Hello and welcome to the Cretaceous Campcast. I am Cretaceous Dave, and this is a podcast all about Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous and Jurassic World Chaos Theory. In this episode of the Campcast, I had the honor and privilege to sit down once again with Chaos Theory head writer Bethany Armstrong Johnson. It was great to catch up with her. Last time we chatted was right after season one, and we had a lot of good things to talk about. Didn't have as long because unfortunately I did have to get back to work, but I had a great time talking to her, and I can't thank her enough for taking time out of her schedule to sit and chat and just kind of reminisce a little bit about this show and these characters. And we spent a lot of time on season 4. Actually, I didn't know where we were going to go. When we first started talking, but it's good. She had a lot of great things to say. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that and I'll let you take a listen for yourself. Thank you so much. And I appreciate your time. So
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
it's been a while. Last time
It's
we
been a bit.
chatted was
Yeah.
right after season 1 came out. And of course, you knew everything that was coming up, but we had no idea.
Yeah.
So good
We
on
knew a
you.
lot. I don't remember if we knew everything. I'm trying to remember exactly the timing, but we did know a lot. We knew a lot of what was coming up.
Yeah, so good for you for not accidentally letting anything go.
Yeah. That's the hard honestly, I feel like that's the hardest part of the job is just keeping it just because you're excited about the show. Not that you like want to spoil it, but you're just excited about what you're working on and you want to and you're like, nope, I gotta lock it down. Gotta lock it
I
in.
I know. So season 4 was the first time I had early access to a season, and then after I watched it, I'm like, what do I do? Because
Yeah.
it's weeks and I
You
can't
just
talk
sit
to
on it.
anybody about this.
You
It's
just
like,
sit
no,
on it.
this
That's what you
this
gotta
is
do.
terrible. Like I thought this would be a great thing, and it was. I got to interview Scott, and I got to
Yeah.
make an episode early. So as soon as the show dropped, there was my thoughts, and I had a
Nice.
spoiler free review when the embargo lifted. But it was like, there's nothing else I could do. Like I'm so excited about this, but I can't tell anybody.
Yeah, now you know how we felt like having made it and just like, because obviously the animation process is so long. So it's like we knew what was happening way before just because it's like it's got to be boarded and then it's got to be in it. And so you're just kind of like sitting on all this and you're reading people's thoughts on season 3 while you know what happens next and like all the different theories and things like that. I mean, I'm not super, I don't read everything because I like to keep it, separated. But at the same time, you see a little bit of stuff and you're like, man, they just don't really know. And I can't say anything. And this is just, I just hope they like it. That's always the thing is just like, I hope everybody likes it. That's always the
Yeah.
anticipatory thing. It's just like, we worked really hard. I hope people like it.
Yeah. I really appreciate everything you and your team did. The
Thank
show
you.
from start to finish was absolutely incredible.
Oh, thank you.
When I talked to Scott, and at the time, I think it was a lot of recency bias. I said that
Sure.
I thought season 4 of all 9 seasons of the 2 shows may have been my favorite because I'm one of the like weirdos that I absolutely love Dominion as a movie
Yeah.
for what it did and what Colin was trying to do, and I appreciated it.
Yeah.
So season 4 for me was like, it makes that movie even better. And oh my gosh, these characters were like over here when
Yeah.
this was happening and stuff like that. And it was great. I loved it so much. And like thinking back, season 3 of Camp Cretaceous might have jumped it again.
Sure.
Because that's really hard to beat. But I still really do love season 4. Well, all 4 seasons actually, from start to finish, the show is great. And actually, I guess this is a good question to start on. For
Sure.
me, it felt like this show was very cohesive from start to finish. That did you guys write the entire series like all at once or in a row, or were there like gaps? Because it seemed Camp Cretaceous may have had, like some time in between or like thinking about things. And I could be totally wrong with that show too. It just didn't seem as put together as Chaos
Mhm.
Theory did.
Yeah, it's interesting because actually both shows were kind of written in the same way where there weren't really many gaps in between everything. The structure was very much where we had a couple weeks in between each season to sort of high level figure out what we wanted to do. Like very early on in Chaos Theory, we kind of had a little bit of a blueprint of like really, really high level, like what we wanted to do with the show, what kind of stuff we wanted to explore with the characters, etc. And we had really it was like me, Scott, and Aaron were in a room. Sometimes our supervising producer, Zisung Kang, was there as well. But it was really just like the three of us kind of just like hashing out high level, like what we wanted to do overall, and then figuring out that first season. And so then as we kind of progressed through, and the process sort of changed and evolved a little bit as we figured our way through it, and as we figured out, like, the reviews process for executives and for the Jurassic team and for Colin and things like that. But really it was like we were kind of, we always talk about, like, the joke was always we're like building the plane as we're flying it, kind of a thing, or the train, whichever one. And it was, it was figuring out, like, okay, this is kind of like what we want to do on a high level. And then each season we got like a couple weeks to like figure out, again, that season sort of like overall thing. But we're always, with the writers and everybody, we're always kind of discussing exactly what to do. So it was like, you're just kind of like trying to lay the tracks while you're building it and things. And that's kind of how it was on Camp Cretaceous as well. We did a very similar process where it was, we figure out kind of one season, then we have a couple weeks to figure out, more detail the next season while we're writing the first season. And then, while we're writing second season, we're kind of already thinking ahead to third season and however many episodes we had ordered and things like that. But it was a very similar process. We did have, I think, because Camp Cretaceous was like longer, we had some leadership changes over the course of the show, which probably some people left or different things like that. And so I think that maybe influenced the feelings of differences that you kind of felt in Camp Cretaceous, like what you were talking about. Whereas we got really lucky on Chaos Theory, where everybody was just kind of like locked in from the beginning, and everybody was like, we're doing this. We're all kind of on the same team. We're all, and not to say that Camp Cretaceous didn't have, a lot of that as well, but it was just like, for whatever reason, maybe it was the shrinking of the industry and jobs weren't as available, so people weren't leaving. I don't know, but I think it really worked to our advantage to really have that core creative team be the same team through the whole thing. And we just learned, and also we had learned the best ways to work with each other on Camp Cretaceous. And so we were taking all of that knowledge and applying it to Chaos Theory. And so I feel like on Chaos Theory, we were just like a really well-oiled machine. We'd already worked together for a while. And, we were in different roles and different things like that. Like, I was a staff writer on Camp Cretaceous, but I became the head writer on Chaos Theory. And, so there were different like roles and things, but we had all mostly, high level, like, worked together before. And other people that we had brought in that maybe hadn't worked on Camp Cretaceous, they fit the vibe. They knew kind of like what to do going in. And so we were able to just take what we had learned on Camp Cretaceous, apply it to Chaos Theory, and just like get better and better and better and more streamlined and more efficient and, just like more cohesive as we went. So I think maybe that's sort of what you're feeling too, is just our ability to work together really well and learn, all the little tricks and things that we need to do in order to accomplish everything. And, and working with Colin and the Jurassic franchise people and just all of that, you just kind of learn as you go, and you get more and more knowledge, which I think helps apply to making everything a little bit better, a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more efficient, like I was saying. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys did a fantastic job
Thank
with
you.
that, and like not just the writers, but everybody involved.
Yeah, it's a whole team effort. Like, the writers were great. Obviously, they came in having seen Camp Cretaceous, but not having worked on it, and were able to just like pick up the vibe, but also give it the freshness that we were looking for. But I mean, really, everybody on the team, from the art department, storyboards, lighting, animation, effects, like everybody, it was just like, it was such a big effort. And it was really one of the shows that I've got, like, one of the only shows I've gotten to work on where really every department was like so involved in every piece of the process in such a collaborative way that it was, we all still talk about it just being like one of the best shows and experiences. And obviously we got to make a really good product, which is always the goal, but like, also, you're working on this for years. You like want to have fun working with your coworkers and things. And everything was just like so cohesive that, yeah, it's kind of like we all reminisce about it a little bit even now, like, man, those were the good times, and I've gotten to work on some really good projects since then too that have been fantastic too. But I think there was just something very special about that. And it's also a franchise we all love, and the world loves. So that doesn't hurt,
Yeah. I had the opportunity to talk to like a few people from different departments, and everybody kind of had the same
Yeah.
sentiment, and it's great to hear. And everybody did such a good job. And you can tell from every department, everybody put like so much love
Yeah.
into making the show that you can watch some things and it's not on the same level, because I have a 3-year-old. So some of the stuff we watch, like, you can tell people are just doing it because they're just pumping out 50 episodes a
Yes.
season of like a preschool show. And
Yeah.
it's like, this is just my job. But you guys like put so much into making an amazing product that
Yeah.
it shows from the sound to the lighting. It's like when I was talking to Ethan, I was like, words can't describe some of the like small details that you guys put into some of this
Yeah.
stuff. Like, and then he enlightened me on so much more and like so many little things I didn't pick up on. And then rewatching, I was like, that is so cool.
Yeah, everybody really brought their A game. Everybody is like super passionate about it. And I know sometimes that like franchise shows, especially weirdly animated shows, can get a bad rap of like, oh, they're just doing it for the toy grab, the money grab, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure that exists. But you also got to know that there are some like really creative people who love the franchise or love the property or, just grew up on it, who want to respect what it is and give you something fresh and new while also maintaining the sort of integrity of the property that we all have fallen in love with. And that's what this show was. I can't speak to every other show that's in any sort of IP about like their creative team, but I know for us it's like, yeah, you can criticize all you want. That's what life is. We're all doing that. But at the same time, this wasn't, this might have been a money grab for somebody high. Who knows why anybody greenlights anything, but for everybody who was on that show, it was like, definitely, we love this franchise. We love these characters that we've created. We love this world that we've created. We just want to be able to play in the sandbox and have a lot of fun and explore some themes and ideas that maybe we haven't been able to because TV allows us to dive a little bit deeper into character stories and emotional stories. So like that's like what and like introduce some new dinosaurs that we haven't gotten to see before because like that's always the fun of it too. So that's definitely what this was. It who knows if it was a money grab from some perspective, but for us it's like we don't see any of the money from toys, so we're just doing it for the love of the game.
Yeah, no, it really shows the show. If I say it after everything, sorry, but it really shows that how much you guys put into it, and
I'm glad.
I appreciate it so much. It's very high up there on things I really enjoy watching. That includes live action shows, not just animated stuff. So
I appreciate that.
I actually have a perfect segue now, just because you dropped the name, and something that I was curious about with the show was Colin involved at all in like either decision making or writing, or is it just this is based on the movies he put together, so his name is tacked onto it?
Right. That's always the question, right? Colin was always very involved in the show. He was working on, I'm trying to remember exactly the timelines of everything, but I believe he was working on Jurassic World when we kind of started Camp Cretaceous and then into Chaos Theory. I remember at the beginning of Chaos Theory, we got to see it was a pretty finished, but I think an earlier cut of Dominion. Man, the NDAs that we had to sign for that were like, it was just like, you can't tell anyone. We're like, we promise we won't. So he was like working on those. So obviously while he was kind of in the middle of filming, there was a lot more of a difficulty to kind of just get things in front of him just because of the timing. But when we were able to get him in, he was very involved. He was reviewing things all the time. He was sending us messages, encouraging messages and notes and ideas and things. And especially in the like season breaks that we did, where we had a couple weeks to sort of figure out what we were going to do for the next season, we brought him in, and Zach Stentz as well, and got he was like the original creator of Camp Cretaceous. And they were super involved in giving us ideas and telling us kind of what they liked exploring. And then we just were able to like bounce a lot of ideas. So he was super involved. He's always very encouraging to us, and was just really a great partner to have, actually. In being able to ask questions about sort of the intentions of Dominion or things like that, but also like, okay, what are things that you wanted to explore but didn't have a chance to? What are some things that we can do? But then also, so he's always very good about that, but then also, sort of giving us the creative freedom to sort of find our own way and figure out our own character stories and things like that. So yeah, he was super involved, and it was great to have him.
Oh, that's awesome. That's not the answer I expected. So it's great. Great.
Now, some people are like, what was it like to work directly with Steven Spielberg? And I'm like, well, not as much as far, I mean, I've heard that he was very happy with what we did. That is kind of like what we got, but like, it wasn't like he was coming into the writer's room every day.
Yeah. I wasn't going to ask about him.
Yeah, exactly. But some people do. And I'm just to set the record straight, he's great. I got to meet him, but which was fantastic, obviously. And he's like such a, icon and hero for so many of us in the filmmaking world.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a busy man, so
Yeah.
not in the
Yeah.
writer's room every day.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
No, that's great to hear Colin was involved though.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows with how perfectly the show blends in with the movie.
Yeah.
So, and I guess if you guys were writing at kind of the same time the movie was being done, it makes sense
Yeah, a lot of
with
what we
how
were
things go.
Yeah, a lot of what we were figuring out, like when we first watched Dominion, was kind of like, okay, where, do we want this to fall in? And we had some feedback early on that was like, we didn't, the franchise didn't want to extend it too far beyond Dominion, because at that time they weren't sure exactly what was going to happen next in terms of the movies and things like that. So it was like, okay, we don't want to extend, we're not setting this like way in the future. We're not, it's kind of similar to Camp Cretaceous. It's very aligned with the movie. And so that was fun for us to kind of figure out like, okay, where exactly do we want to fit this in? How do we do this? And I mean, I'm sure Scott's probably talked about it, but like when we first watched Dominion and we saw Deechin, we were like, amazing, we love her, we want to figure out how to bring Santos in. So like that helped us kind of figure out exactly where to fit it in. And then having conversations with Colin was like, okay, these are the places where we can weave it in. And again, he was really good about not really, like, he was really supportive of us just sort of pitching our ideas and figuring it out. And he would give feedback and we'd kind of go back and forth, but there was a lot of freedom there. So there was a lot of us just like watching Dominion over and over and over, being like, okay, what can we do? Can we do something here? Or like, how do we set this up? Or different things like that. So
Oh, that's really cool. I love hearing the process and
yeah,
how you guys work and stuff. That's really good, especially like I said, somebody that loves that movie. So
yeah.
I know that's not a popular opinion with a lot of old school
I think
Jurassic fans, but
I think there's an interesting thing that I've noticed a little bit over the years, and I don't know how, but you kind of mentioned recency bias, when earlier when you're talking about chaos theory, and I feel like there is like almost like a anti-recency bias. Like sometimes it's like because we're so excited, and I even find myself doing this, so like no shade to anybody, but you're so excited for something to come out, and you've built it up so much in your mind, and then when it comes out, you're kind of like, oh, it didn't hit this or it didn't do that, and it can feel a little bit maybe disappointing is maybe too strong, but it can feel a little, not exactly what you wanted. But sometimes I find that when I watch a movie then the second time, now that I kind of know going in, I can enjoy it for what it is a lot. I tend to be one of the kind of people who, when I go into a movie, I'm like, I am trying to just experience it for what it is. I try really not to watch trailers to get too many expectations and things like that. I'm that person. But I do find when I talk to other people who kind of have that, it's like when they go back, and I've noticed this trend a little bit with Dominion, where it's gotten a little bit more love after it's been out for a while and people have watched it a little bit more. So I do think that there is an element of it was tackling a lot of things that people didn't expect it to. And I can see that being a little bit sort of disorienting or maybe not exactly what you're expecting. But then when you go back to it, you're like, I can really appreciate it for what it's kind of what you were saying, the reasons that you like. It's like you can tell what it's trying to accomplish. You can tell what it's trying to do and what it's trying to say. And I think that it's a bold swing, but I think it's nice to have those sometimes. And then going back and watching it, you're like, oh, I see how this fits in. And I think, especially with the characters that you love seeing, and being able to bring back some of those legacy characters, I think it's trying to do a lot. It's trying to please a lot of people. And I think it really, when you kind of go back and watch it, it's like it does accomplish what it's setting out to do. And I think it's doing it well. But I also understand when people are like, it's not what I wanted. It's like, well, yeah, okay.
yeah. And I think the extended edition helped.
Yes,
Because
for
that
sure,
added some
for sure.
stuff. They're like, why wasn't that there in the first place? And I
Yeah.
get it. Universal cut it out for time. They wanted,
They
there's
wanted a runtime.
there's
Yeah.
a magic number runtime where you can squeeze an extra showing into theaters and stuff like
Yeah,
that. So
exactly.
it makes sense. But that it helped improve the movie, by adding that.
Yeah, all that
extra stuff
context
in,
is
so.
important. Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, switching gears a little bit back
Sure.
to Chaos Theory.
Yes.
One of the things that really surprised me in season 4 was Ernest showing up. And when I mentioned it to Scott, he credited you with that, and not to build you up too much, but he said like most good ideas that came from Bethany. But so what was your thought process? Like, what made you bring him back, and not just to just be there, but he was all kind of essential into making things work.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember back to the impetus of that, to be honest, because I know one of the things that we had talked about was after we had kind of cast Ernest as well, with the amazing Skylar Gazondo, and also just like hearing how he kind of did it was like, well, we got to bring him back. Like he was so fun to work with, and also just like a great foil for Brooklyn. And I think that and like all the talks with the writers, because they were also a big part of this entire process, and fighting for Ernest to come back. And I think a large part of that was like how good of a foil he was for Brooklyn, and how he was kind of he could be a reflection of sort of her journey, and how she's evolved over the course of these 4 seasons. And I feel like obviously she has sort of the biggest, I think, arc in terms of just her entire trajectory for the course of over the 4 seasons. I think everybody has a really strong arc, but she's kind of the biggest swing through the whole thing. And so being able to kind of set him up earlier on in this show, and then use him as another way to kind of reflect what her journey has been and what she has learned, but also what she still needs to learn, felt like a really good sort of bookend and way to kind of express that visually and through another character, because obviously she has all of this history with everybody else, and her history with Santos and all of that, or her relationship with Santos over the course of this is very like fraught and is very complicated. And she has a complicated relationship with a lot of the camp fam now because of everything that's gone on. So it was kind of a way to infuse sort of somebody new who could give her that sort of perspective, or like I said, kind of holding a mirror up to her without sort of all of the good and bad, but like baggage of everybody else, and being able to kind of show and then also for the camp fam to be able to see how she's interacting in this new stage of her life. Obviously they kind of saw her with Santos, but it's a very different dynamic versus somebody who is a foil and is a little bit, complicated in the relationship, but is ultimately, sort of a guy trying to figure out a way to do good in the world, even if he's going about it in probably one of the worst ways that you could go about it. So seeing somebody who is a little bit more genuine than Santos, and seeing how she interacts with them is also kind of a light bulb moment, obviously for the camp fam who's with her when she interacts with him. And then being able to give him a little bit of a change as well into, having a slight more awareness was like fun to be able to, play. We always try to find ways to give characters, no matter how big their role was, a change. Like that's what I feel like, an arc, something to be able to like work with them. And I think that is something that I always want to help bring to actors, because it makes the roles more juicy for them and more interesting. But also I think as a viewer, it's like that's what we go to TV especially for, is like the character dynamics and relationships. And so making sure that nobody felt just kind of like an NPC just there for the plot, giving as many of these characters their own sort of mini arcs as much as we can, I think just makes for a more satisfying view, but also feels more realistic, because everybody is the main character of their own story. So, from that perspective of writing somebody, it's like Ernest thinks, especially Ernest, I think out of everybody, he definitely thinks he's the main character. He told the story of like telling that helicopter to stay for years and years afterwards.
Probably, yeah. Or maybe embellish the story a little bit as it went on.
Exactly. He was probably the helicopter pilot. Who knows?
Yeah. He's the big hero of the story.
Yeah, exactly. He's kind of a little bit how Kenji was at the beginning of Camp Cretaceous, little boisterous, a little.
I can see that now. Yeah. Never really thought about that, but yeah. Sticking with writing in season 4, I heard your room was very divided on this topic, about keeping Ben alive or dead.
Yes.
Where did you fall? I know ultimately you wrote the finale, so we know where it ended up, going.
Where it ended up. Yeah.
But, were you leaning one way or the other before you guys, came to like the decision of where to go with it?
I think I'm trying to figure out how to say it. My ultimate goal when like for everything, but especially with this particular topic, was I want to do the thing that makes the most sense narratively and for these characters, and also the thing that is going to feel the most satisfying for what we've built for them. And so my I think people are going to have a different perception of what my opinion was than what my internal dialogue was, because outwardly I was very pushing for exploring every option. And so to a lot of people, that looked like I wanted to kill Ben. And I didn't. I wanted to be able to explore all the options. So I didn't want it to be off the table. I didn't want it to just be an immediate no, because I wanted to do the due diligence of making sure that we were being very true to what we set up, true to what these characters, true to life, true to just everything that we had been setting up. So my goal was always just to dig in and really explore what feels right and feels the most satisfying for these characters and their journey. And so a lot of people were very anti kill Ben. And so to them, then I would kind of be like, well, we got to think about killing Ben. You know what I mean? I think there's a very big perception of that, where really ultimately the secret was just me wanting to be able to explore it with the vigor and the, really diving into it like we would explore a lot of different options in the writer's room. But because obviously it's such a big topic, and also it was like this, the series finale, it was a topic of discussion and a big thing for a long time. So I also like to, I don't know, we're like fun and we like to do bits and stuff. So there was a lot of times where I would just kind of like say we should kill Ben just to see people's reaction because I'm terrible. But also just to kind of gauge like how do people feel and how, because our crew was fantastic, and everybody was like such a big fan of the show and these characters. And it was so fun because when a script would come out, everybody from like art director to, storyboard artists, designers, PAs, everybody would kind of like come and give, like, oh, I can't believe you did this in this episode. And so it was kind of our, the writers, especially since we're just kind of the first part of the process, it was sort of our gauge of like, what is an audience going to think about this? What are fans of the shows? Because so many people on our show were fans of what we were doing. So it was really good to be able to kind of gauge and get reactions and see. So there was a lot of just like wanting to kind of see how people would feel about it, see how people would react. And we definitely had some people on the show who were like, very like, yeah, we should kill him. Absolutely kill him right now. And some people were much more like, no, obviously you can't kill him. And I was more of like I want to explore every possibility to make sure that we're doing what we feel is like the right thing to do. So that's
I guess technically you got it both ways, because I guess
and
you,
also I did
die.
technically kill him anyway. And so that was also, I fought for that a lot, because that was my way of being like, now no one can be mad at us. Everybody's happy, everybody wins.
Yeah, you did, like in that episode in particular, you did a really good job of making me believe, like even at the very end, like the beanie at the table when they're all getting together, like, is that just a memorial piece? And then the black car showing up, and Gia looks like she was at a funeral.
Yeah, I remember when
So
Scott like sent the message of like, because we had been talking about this episode for a while, but then somebody was like, because of the way that animation works, sometimes you get you're able to figure out ways to kind of save some extra what we call credits, which is like, things we can do different character designs. That's why we were able to do some like character designs that were a little bit different for the Camp Fam, like in that what we call the epilogue, where they're like in different outfits or different hair or different things like that. And so I remember we were kind of like talking about Gia, and Scott was like, she should be wearing all black, and we were all like, that's so evil, but yes, she should.
yeah, you guys had me all the way up until the end. Then he got out of the car, like, oh, okay. And it's a weird, topic, because the whole time I was like, I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
Because it made sense. But then when he's live, I'm like, oh, I'm actually really happy. So you played with the emotions, and it's interesting that you used the word satisfying a few times, like talking about it, because that was literally the word I used to describe the show to Scott. Is that like, I didn't know what to expect, especially the end of the show. And I said after the first watch, when I turned it off, I felt satisfied. So it's, and
that's a dream. That's a dream. Thank you so much. Because that's like ultimately, that's kind of like the highest compliment, is like, it can be so difficult to do these shows, and like you're just doing the best you can. So like, like I said, that's our goal ultimately. So the fact that that's the word that you came away with is like, oh, that makes me so
happy. It is, because I had no idea what to expect. I'm like, are people going to live? Are they going to die? Are they going to go separate ways? Like, where is it? And then I was like, I don't know really what I just watched, but I loved it. kind of thing. And it was, yeah, it was really cool. It was great, and I appreciated everything you know you guys did. So
I appreciate that. Yeah.
definitely well done with that. And it for the longest time after, I was like, I'm okay if we never see these characters again, and like, not because I don't want to, but you left it off in such a way that I
Yeah.
was like, I'm fine, and I don't want them thrown into something just because, kind of steal your term from earlier, like, if the studio sees it as a cash grab to bring them back, because these shows are really popular, and, if it's not a good story, which I don't think, like, Scott would sign off on something that's not a
Right.
good story, and, like, if you were asked to come back, you wouldn't either,
Right.
kind of thing, but I wouldn't wanna see them just thrown into something that doesn't make sense, or just to make another show. I'm
Yeah.
like, they left in such a good place that
Yeah.
if there was a 3rd animated show, I'd be completely fine if it was different characters, and,
Yeah.
maybe somebody makes a cameo or something like that, or, they call them, but, I was just overall really happy with the end, and, like, how it worked out in the end, and I wasn't sure if we were going for a happy ending, or if I wanted a happy ending,
Yeah.
but like I said, after I saw it, I was like, "Okay, this is they did it."
Yeah.
You guys finished the job, so
Well, and to that point, we also didn't know for the longest time exactly, because obviously, like I was joking about wanting to explore the options, but we really kept everybody hanging for a really long time on that too, because we wanted the chance to explore everything and really dig into it. There was talk of like writing two different endings, just to kind of explore both options. That became a little bit too cumbersome to try to figure out. But when I wrote the initial outline for that episode, I did a little, what I call it, I'm calling it a stunt script, but I don't know if that's the right term. But basically, as you were reading it, there was just like, I let the moment breathe way more than you would in a script. Because, we have sort of a standard, like, you write an outline, you write a first draft, you write a second draft, you write a final draft. And so those tend to have very set parameters in terms of how many pages they are and things like that. But I really broke the rules with the outline for the last one, and really sort of just let the moment of the reveal of Ben breathe. And to the point where I had a lot of people very, like, not actually mad at me, but mad because they were getting very emotional, which was the goal of what I was trying to do with that outline. And I actually got permission from DreamWorks to share that portion of the outline. I haven't done it yet because I'm not sure the best way to get it out to people. I used to be a little bit more active on Twitter, and that kind of disintegrated a little bit. So I haven't been active on there. So if that's of interest to people, I'm happy to put it out there, but I just don't know the best place to put it. But so, let me know, I guess. But yeah, it was definitely a thing where even, up until the very last minute, the crew didn't know what we had decided. The team didn't know until that last outline went out what the option was. And again, kind of going back to what I was saying before, sorry, I'm kind of going backwards a little bit, but because the crew was our audience, it was like really being able to give them the same experience as the audience was going to have watching it was really the goal of the entire writing team. Because we had been on this journey so long with everybody, and everybody was like so invested. I wanted, I didn't want to just kind of be like, oh, and here's the answer, this is it. I wanted to give them the same, because they weren't going to get to see it in the same way that everybody else was going to. So I wanted to give everybody who's like so invested in it that same sort of emotional thing. So yeah, all the way up until the end, they didn't even know if it was going to be a satisfying ending or not, or like, and again, like, hopefully it would be satisfying whatever we felt deemed was best, but they just didn't know which way it was going to go. And same thing with the voice actors. We didn't tell anybody except for Sean, who plays Ben. We didn't tell anybody what the outcome was going to be until they received that last script for that last record. And I did the same sort of formatting just to give them that same sort of sense, because we wanted to give everybody the same sort of emotional journey that the audience was going to get to go on. So it was really fun to be able to have the freedom. I appreciate like what Scott let me do, and DreamWorks and everybody, to like play around with form a little bit, just to give everybody that like satisfying same emotional journey that the audience was going to go on. And yeah, they really didn't, nobody knew it until the last second what it was going to be. But then when we finally, it was revealed, and like the outline or the script went out, everyone was like, okay, yeah, yeah, we're on board. And some people were still like, he should have died. But I think most the consensus was that this was going to be the most satisfying for the whole camp fam, and everybody's journey. And that's what we decided in the writers' room too, very early on. But it was just, well, not very, I shouldn't say very early on, but earlier on than other people knew. We had sort of decided this, but we wanted to, just really go down every avenue to make sure, and just really like cross all of our T's and dot all of our I's and make sure. But this really felt like satisfying. And then as I was writing it, the more and more I sort of dug into it, I was like, this is just like such a pivotal moment for me. I'd been on Camp Cretaceous and all of Chaos Theory. The whole, I was like one of the earliest people that was hired onto Camp Cretaceous as a script coordinator, and rose the ranks and became a staff writer. And then, so like it was kind of this big culmination in my own writing journey as well. This is my first time staffing on a show was on Camp Cretaceous. And then obviously like I've been on other shows since then, but then, rising to head writer and stuff. So it was like a big kind of pivotal moment for me to be able to write all these characters together, having this moment, having been a part of their whole journey through the whole thing. It was really emotional and really I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to write that, and explore some of the if you look at season 4, we do a lot with emotion. we really put these characters through the ringer, and especially in the last couple episodes. And, part of my job is the writers are fantastic, and their jobs are to like really focus on their episodes and make sure that their episodes are so solid. And then my job is to sort of streamline everything and make sure emotionally overall the season arcs are really hitting, and that the character voices are consistent, and that, we're building to what we want to. So having been so involved in season 4 and, tweaking everything, kind of knowing what I was building to at the end, obviously with Scott, but like what, for me, the writer of that episode was building to at the end was just like, it was a big deal for me. It was very emotional for me. And I was just really grateful to be a part of it and be able to kind of wrap up this journey. And kind of like what you're saying too, it's like, obviously if DreamWorks wanted to come back and do something with these characters, I would be thrilled to explore that. But it would take, I think, I'm sure Scott and I would probably have a lot of conversations about what that would look like in a way that doesn't feel like we're stepping on what their journey has been thus far, and exploring it in a new way, which is exactly what we wanted to do with Chaos Theory as well. And we got really fortunate, and DreamWorks was letting us kind of explore a completely different sort of way that this camp fam was going to interact with the world, and being isolated on an island versus getting to sort of explore the world, and being young teens versus young adults. And so we would want to bring something very fresh to it if DreamWorks approached us about wanting to do something new. That way it doesn't feel like we're retreading, but at the same time, knowing that there weren't any plans, and as far as I know, still aren't any plans for something else. It was also like, but this also has to feel like it's an okay ending, that if we leave it, we know that, the characters will be okay. The characters will be able to continue living their lives, and it's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be easy for them. And there's still a lot of shit that they have to figure out. Stuff that they have to figure out. But they've made it through, and we've given them the tools to be able to hopefully, still survive and thrive and all of those things. Without, tying it up in a way that feels good for where these characters are at, but knowing that it's not like at the end of these sorts of things, everything is okay. And look, everybody is fine, and there's nothing wrong with anybody. It was like really wanting to make it feel real. And like, if real characters went through this, how would they be feeling? And they would be feeling very grateful to be alive, but also knowing that they got a lot of stuff to figure out, but knowing that they have each other, and just giving it that really satisfying sort of end. I know I keep saying satisfying, sorry. The really, but just at the same time, just giving it these characters, having the ability to connect with each other and feel like if this is the end, we haven't left, we left it all in the court.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that was, like I said, that was kind of the same way I was thinking, but I'm glad to hear you're, the same way. And I kind of got the impression that you guys would feel that way because of, what you put in to the show. Like I said, it didn't seem like you were doing it because it was a job, that like it meant something, to you. And you have this relationship with these characters over, we're we're pushing 7 years since
Yeah.
Camp Cretaceous was first announced.
Yeah.
So it's like it's crazy that it's,
I think it's
been that
yeah,
long.
it's been like 8 years, I think, since I started working on it.
Yeah, that's
Like,
that's
yeah.
that's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, I don't have as much time as we
Oh,
had
sure.
last time to chat because, unfortunately, I have a job and I don't just
Yeah,
get to talk to people,
I know.
all day, which would be a lot cooler.
Sorry if I've kept you too long. I don't.
No, 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 that's okay. I loved everything you had to say. You didn't keep me over. I just don't want to get myself into something, and
Sure.
then we'll start talking about something else,
That's
and
fair.
going too long. I do have one quick last thing, not
Sure.
related to the shows, just more for you. Do you have any advice if any, like, young or aspiring writers, are listening and are interested that maybe were inspired by the shows or anything like that? Some words of advice or encouragement, especially with things like AI taking jobs and everything now. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough time for all of us. We're all trying to figure it out, but, I think the thing that, I'm constantly trying to do is just keep creating because I think that's the most important that's what we all love to do. That's what I think is we AI taking over is something that is around and it's tough, but I do think that it's going to sort of show its hand pretty quick. It's kind of already been showing its hand that it's not as good as when humans can create things, and I think uh, everybody has their own individual voice. Everybody has their own lived experiences, and that's what people gravitate to in art and in storytelling. And so it might not always be as easy to get paid to do it, as it maybe had been in the past, but these things fluctuate all the time. And so I would say just like keep going, keep expressing yourself through your storytelling, and you'll find, if you're authentic and you're constantly pushing yourself to explore what you want to explore and use it as a way to connect with audiences, like we'll find a way. Like we just as a society will find a way to keep giving those stories to each other in whatever capacity that looks like, I think, because it is the thing that humans desire, is that connection and that storytelling and being able to see yourself reflected in a way that maybe you hadn't before. And I think that's what's really important. I think that's what we got to explore on this show. And so that's where I go. I don't want anybody to be discouraged from doing that. It may not always be the most lucrative thing in the world. But we're all kind of in a place of just like trying to figure out what the important things in life are. And I do think that's one of them, is relating to people and constantly creating to make that connection and to also reflect society and to reflect a society you want to see, or maybe one that exists in a way that you want to see changed. And I think that's the important part of storytelling. So it's not a great answer because I wish the answer was like, yes, of course, if you do that, you will be rich and famous and everything will be fine. But I think we're all seeing the contraction of everything going on. But I do think the important thing is to keep going, because that's what we all want. And that's kind of what life is about, is that connection. And we see it with a lot of the things that people want to keep watching, is diverse stories that they hadn't heard before and perspectives that they hadn't seen, and broadening your own world, because you may live in a part of the world or a part of the country where you don't have that expanded worldview, and TV is sort of your a little bit of like looking glass into that. And I think that's super important for everybody to be able to see. And it's like, so let's keep educating everybody on just like the different ways that life can be, and I think we'll grow more connected by doing that.
Great. Also,
I don't
yeah,
know.
and
I
I
don't
don't
know.
think I don't think anyone gets into art for the money. They get into it because
Right.
they love, art
Yeah.
and what they do, and they're passionate about it.
Yeah.
I'm a software developer, and I got into it because I love it's the nerd in me. I just love writing code, and
Yeah.
it's obviously it's a different profession that does pay better than some others depending on, where you are, but I don't
Sure.
do it for the money. I do it because I love what I do.
Yeah.
Um, that there are bigger, the well-known companies that I could probably work for and, make more money, but I'm like,
Yeah.
I I'm not going to do what I love with them, that I kind of like
Yeah.
own what I do now. So it's,
Yeah.
I'm not comparing what I do to what you guys do. Just,
No,
I
but
just throw that out there. But,
no, of course, no. I
um,
mean, it's still an important thing, and I think that's a really good perspective is just the thing of, like, how can you do the thing that you love and share it with the world in the way that feels authentic to what you want, and sometimes that's working at a smaller company, sometimes it's making your own thing, sometimes it's getting to work on a big IP, franchise show. It just really depends, but yeah, you kind of always have to have that your own sort of personal compass of, like, what you feel comfortable doing, so I get it, yeah.
so unfortunately, that's it for this time.
This was
Um,
wonderful, thanks for
I
having me.
oh, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this. I'm
Of
glad
course.
we were able to make it happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, who knows? Maybe we could do it again in the
Yeah,
future.
I'll
I
remember even less
I
than
so
I
will
currently
I.
do.
Or I could cheat and I could just rewatch something and just
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
hammer
We can
you
go
on
on.
questions, and you'd be like,
Yeah, yeah.
I have no idea. I don't know."
Rapid fire, just
So,
here they
yeah.
all are.
Okay, so in season 2, episode 3, at the 3-minute and
Yeah, it's like,
15-second mark, just throw something out there.
yeah, exactly.
But no, really, I really do appreciate everything you
Of
and your
course.
team, not just you, not gonna single you out. You
Yeah,
had an amazing team,
definitely.
that you put together and you worked with. But thank you so much for everything, you've done for these shows and the franchise as a whole. I think
Yeah.
it makes the franchise better.
Oh, thank you.
Um, so I thank you so much again for your time,
Of course. Thanks, Dave.
and thank you once again to Bethany. It was so great catching up, chatting again, and who knows, maybe we'll chat again sometime soon. I don't really have any news about anything. I do have some other stuff I'm trying to schedule coming up, so keep your eyes on social media. I'll let you know when that stuff is happening. Um, not necessarily Campcast related, but because he is a huge part of the Campcast family and a contributor. Kia, UD Tyrant, has been back online a little bit, so things are improving, and thankfully him and his family are safe and doing well. And hopefully he'll be back online and contributing and helping out and chatting all things Chaos Theory and Camp Cretaceous with you once again. So great to hear from you, Kia. Good to have you back online, even if it's just temporary in a little bit. But that wraps things up. Look forward to some other stuff coming up. I'm thinking about another contest. We'll see. I'll let you know what's going on with that. But that's everything for today. So I want everyone to stay safe, stay Jurassic, and have a good one. So long. Hey guys, me again. And just a quick apology to Eric. While I was talking to Bethany, I accidentally called him Ethan. And no offense, nothing intended with that, Eric. I'm really sorry. Just in the time when we were talking, for some reason, the name Ethan popped into my head. Long story, it's a relative named Ethan. We were just talking to his mom yesterday. So that name was right there. So apologies to Mr. Eric T. Hawkins, who I love chatting with and I hope to chat with again. Sorry I called you Ethan, Eric. I'm sorry. I did not mean to call you Ethan. But the person I was talking about was the one and only Eric T. Hawkins, the supervisor for lighting and compositing that I had the pleasure to chat with previously on this podcast. So, once again, sorry, Eric. I did not mean to call you Ethan.